Okay, so we are starting on the bottom of page 169. In my room, behind the table, stands a brown leather sofa. I sit down on it. On the walls are pinned countless pictures that I once used to cut out of the newspapers. In between are drawings and postcards that have pleased me. In the corner is a small iron stove. Against the wall opposite stand the bookshelves with my books. I used to live in this room before I was a soldier. The books I bought gradually with the money I earned by coaching, many of them are secondhand. All the classics, for example. One volume in blue cloth boards cost 1 mark 20 pfennigs. I bought them complete because it was thorough going. I did not trust the editors of selections to choose all the best, so I purchased only collected works. So I'd read most of them with laudable zeal. So, meaning laudable zeal, he's saying when I read these books, I read them with a lot of passion and admiration. But few of them really appealed to me. I preferred the other books, the moderns, which were, of course, much dearer. A few I came by not quite honestly. I borrowed and did not return them because I did not want to be part with them. One shelf is filled with school books. They are not so well cared for. They are badly thumbed, and pages have been torn out for certain purposes. Then below are periodicals, papers, and letters all jammed in together with drawings and rough sketches. So we can see in this example that Paul is he's an avid reader and he really enjoys reading and learning. But he also is, he likes to write and he likes to draw as well. I want to think to myself back into that time. It is still in the room. I feel it at once. The walls have preserved it. My hands rest on the arms of the sofa. Now I make myself at home and draw up my legs so that I sit comfortably in the corner, in the arms of the sofa. The little window is open. Through it I see the familiar picture of the street with the rising spire of the church at the end. There are a couple of flowers on the table, pen holders, a shell as a paperweight, the inkwell. Here nothing has changed. It will be like this too, if I am lucky, when the war is over and I come back here for good. I will sit here just like this and look at my room and wait. I feel excited, but I do not want to be, for this is not right. I want that quiet rapture again. I want to feel the same powerful, nameless urge that I used to feel when I turned to my books. The breath of desire that then arose from the colored backs of the books shall fill me again, melt the heavy lump of lead that lies somewhere in me, and waken again in the impatience of the future, the quick joy in the world of thought. It shall bring back again the lost eagerness of my youth. I sit and wait. So he's saying, I want to be able to enjoy just sitting here in the peace and quiet and read. But he's saying, I have changed. I don't want the same things anymore, and I'm not used to this anymore. It occurs to me that I must go and see Kimrich's mother. I might visit Middlestad too. He should be back at the barracks. I look out the window beyond the picture of the sunlit street. Appears a range of hills, distant and light. It changes to a clear day in autumn, and I sit by the fire with Cat and Albert and eat potatoes baked in skins. But I do not want to think of that. I sweep it away. The room shall speak. It must catch me up and hold me. I want to feel that I belong here. I want to hearken and know when I go back to the front that the war will sink down, be drowned utterly in the great homecoming tide. Know that it will then be past forever, and not gnaw at us continually, that it will have none of it but an outward power over us. So he's saying in this part, I want to hearken and know. So he's saying, I want to listen. So he's saying in this example, I want to feel this belonging of my home, but I don't anymore. I don't feel the same way as I used to. The backs of the books stand in rows. I know them all still. I remember arranging them in order. I implore them with my eyes. Speak to me. Take me up. Take me, life of my youth. You are carefree, beautiful. Receive me again. I wait. I wait. Images float through my mind, but they do not grip me. They are mere shadows and memories. So again, he's saying all of this life I lived before the war, is a thing of the past. Nothing. My disquietude grows. So he's saying this feeling of being anxious or uneasy keeps growing as I'm at home. A terrible feeling of foreignness suddenly rises up in me. I cannot find my way back. I am shut out, though I entreat earnestly and put forth all my strength. So he's saying, I'm trying to feel this belonging, and I'm trying to feel like I want to be here and belong here, but he doesn't. He feels like he is belonging after the war. And partially that is because he has changed so much. So his outlook is much different now. Nothing stirs, listless and wretched, like a condemned man. I sit there, and the past withdraws itself. And at the same time, I fear to importune it too much. So he's saying, I fear to harass these ideas because I do not know what might happen then. I am a soldier, and I must cling to that. So he's saying, I should not focus on my past. I need to focus on my present. Wearily, I stand up and look out the window. Then I take one of the books, intending to read, and turn over the leaves. But I put it away and take out another. There are passages in it that have been marked. I look, turn over the pages, take up fresh books. Already they are piled up beside me. Speedily more join the heaps, papers, magazines, letters. I stand there numb, as before a judge. So he's saying, I get these books out, intending to read them. I can't read them like I used to. He's saying, I just feel numb. I don't feel like the person I used to be. Dejected. Words. They do not reach me. Slowly I place the books back in the shelves. Nevermore, quietly I go out of the room. Still, I do not give up hope. I do not indeed go to my room any more, but comfort myself with the thought that a few days are not enough to judge by. Afterwards, later on, there is plenty of time for that. So I go over to see Middlestad in the barracks, and we sit in his room. There is an atmosphere about it that I do not like, but with which I am quite familiar. Middlestad has some news ready for me that electrifies me on the spot. He tells me Cantrick has been called up as a territorial. So, meaning Cantrick, his former school teacher, is going to have to go through boot camp and training like Paul and his friends did. Just think of it, says he, and takes out a couple of good cigars. I come back here from the hospital and bump right into him. He stretches out his paw to me and bleats, Hello, Middlestad, how are you? I look at him and say, Territorial Cantrick, business is business and schnapps is schnapps. You ought to know that well enough. Stand to attention when you speak to a superior officer. You should have seen his face. A cross between a dud and a pickled cucumber. He tried once again to chum up, so I snubbed him a bit harder. Then he brought up his biggest guns and asked confidentially, Would you like me to use my influence so that I can take an emergency exam? He was trying to remind me of those things, you know. Then I got mad, and I reminded him of something instead. Territorial Cantrick, 2 years ago, you preached us into enlisting, and among us there was one, Joseph Bim, who didn't want to enlist. He was killed 3 months before he would have been called up in the ordinary way. If it had not been for you, he would have lived just that much longer. And now, dismiss. You will hear from me later. It was easy to get put in charge of his company. First thing I did was to take him to the stores and fit him out with suitable equipment. You'll see in a minute. So Paul is going back to visit Middlestad. Middlestad is at the base where he is training people for war. Well, he is training one of his former teachers. So Middlestad actually is a superior, and he has a much higher ranking than Cantrick. So he's the one that bosses him around, and he's really enjoying being in charge of Cantrick and telling him what to do. We go to the parade ground. The company has fallen in. Middlestad stands them at ease and inspects. Then I see Cantoric, and I am scarcely able to stifle my laughter. He is wearing a faded blue tunic. On the back and in the sleeves, there are big dark patches. The tunic must have belonged to a giant. The black worn breeches are just as much too short. They reach barely halfway down his calf. The boots, tough old clodhoppers, with turned up toes and laces at the side, are much too big for him. But as a compensation, the cap is too small. A terribly dirty, mean little pillbox. The whole rig out is just pitiful. So purposely, he gives them clothes that don't fit him properly. Middlestod stops in front of him. Territorial Cantoric, do you call those buttons polished? You seem as though you can never learn. Inadequate, Cantoric, quite inadequate. It makes me bubble with glee. In school, Cantoric used to chasten Middlestod with exactly the same expression. Inadequate, Middlestod, quite inadequate. So again, Middlestod, just every little thing, he's trying to get back at Cantoric for all the things he did for him when he was in school. Middlestod continues to upbraid him. Look at Boticher now. There's a model for you to learn from. I can hardly believe my eyes. Boticher is there too. Boticher, our school porter. So a school porter may be another word for someone who is like a custodian at a school. And he is a model. Cantoric shoots a glance at me as if he would like to eat me, but I grin at him innocently, as though I do not recognize him anymore. Nothing could look more ludicrous than his forage cap and his uniform, and this is the object before whom we used to stand in anguish as he sat up there enthroned at his desk, spearing at us with our pencil for our mistakes in those irregular French verbs with which afterwards we made so little headway in France. So he's saying Middlestod keeps harassing him in a sense for the things that he did to him when he was a student. And now he's looking back and thinking, Cantoric used to be very hard and very difficult and used to call us out for mistakes we made when we were learning French. And he's saying, the French he taught us did us no good in war. That is barely 2 years ago, and now here stands Territorial Cantoric, a spell quite broken, with knees bent, arms like pothooks, unpolished buttons, and that ludicrous rig out, an impossible soldier. I cannot reconcile this with the menacing figure at the schoolmaster's desk. I wonder what I, the old soldier, would do if this skinful of a woe ever dared to say to me again, Bomber, give me the imperfect of a lure. Then Middlestod makes them practice skirmishing, and as a favor appoints Cantoric squad leader. So he's making them practice like minor fighting in war. Now in skirmishing, the squad leader has always to keep 20 paces in front of his squad. If the order comes on march about turn, the line of skirmishers simply turns about. But the squad leader, who now finds himself suddenly 20 paces in the rear of the line, has to rush up at the double and take his position, again 20 paces in front of the squad. That makes altogether 40 paces double march. But no sooner has he arrived than the order on the march, turn about, comes again, and he once more has to race at the top, speed another 40 paces to the other side. In this way, the squad has merely made the turnabout in a couple of paces, while the squad leader dashes backwards and forwards like a fart on a curtain pole. This is one of the Himmelstas's well-worn recipes. So in this example, when they're practicing, he puts Cantoric as the leader because he has to do more of the work. So he's putting him through more than what the normal recruits would have to do. He's making them work more and work harder. Cantoric can hardly expect anything else from Middlestod, for he once messed up the latter's chance of promotion, and Middlestod would be a big fool not to make the best of such a good opportunity. As this before, he goes back to the front again. A man might well die easier after the army has given him just one stroke of luck. In the meantime, Cantoric is dashing up and down like a wild boar. After a while, Middlestod stops the skirmish and begins the very important exercise of creeping. On hands and knees, carrying his gun in regulation fashion, Cantoric shoves his absurd figure over the sand immediately in front of us. He is breathing hard, and his panting is music. Middlestad encourages Cantoric the territorial with quotations from Cantoric the schoolmaster. Territorial Cantoric, we have the good fortune to live in a great age. We must brace ourselves and triumph over hardship. So again, Middlestad is just kind of harassing him and kind of getting payback for what Cantoric did to him when he was younger. Cantoric sweats and spits out a dirty piece of wood in which was lodged in his teeth. Middlestad stoops down and says reproachfully, and in their rifles never lose sight of the great adventure, territorial Cantoric. It amazes me that Cantoric does not explode with a bang, especially when, during physical exercises, Middlestad copies him to perfection, seizing him by the seat of his trousers as he is pulling himself up on the horizontal bar so that he can raise his chin above the beam, and then starts to give him good advice. That is exactly what Cantoric used to do to him at school. The extra fatigues are next detailed off. Cantoric and Bodger, bread fatigue, take the hand cart with you. A few minutes later, the two set off together, pushing the barrow. Cantoric is in a fury walks, with his head down, but the porter is delighted to have scored light duty. The bakehouse is away at the other end of the town, and the two must go there and back through the whole length of it. They've done that a couple times already, grins Middlestad. People have begun to watch for them coming. Excellent, I say. But hasn't he reported you yet? He did try. Our CO laughed like the deuce when he heard the story. He hasn't any time for schoolmasters. Besides, I'm sweet on his daughter. So Paul's saying, I'm really surprised he hasn't reported you for being so harsh. And Middlestad just kind of laughs it off because he's saying, our higher commanding officer doesn't have time for it and he thinks it's funny. And he also says, Middlestad has a thing for his commanding officer's daughter, so he kind of just looks the other way. He'll mess up the examination for you. I don't care, says Middlestad calmly. Besides, his complaint came to nothing because I could show that he had had hardly anything but light duty. Couldn't you polish him up a bit, I ask. He's too stupid. I couldn't be bothered, answered Middlestad contemptuously.